Welcome to the HMO Property Show by investors for investors. Catch us weekly as we discuss all things cash flow positive property investing. Whether you're a seasoned investor, a new landlord, or just curious about property investing, this is the podcast for you. Sponsored by the Co-Living Collective, your trusted partner in creating vibrant and sustainable shared living experiences. Visit us at colivingcollective.com.au to learn more.
Welcome back to the HMO Property Show. I'm your host, Neil Gibb, and if you are listening to this podcast on the release date, then I'm in Bali right now, sat on the beach, potentially with a cocktail, depending on the time of the day, because I like to escape the cold weather every winter, and I just go away just to warm the bones back up and just get some R&R with the family. So if you listen to this on Wednesday, Thursday or Friday, there's a good chance I'm still there, guys. I'll be thinking of you, listening to the podcast. And I hope you enjoy this episode, because this episode is about the biggest question we get asked constantly at the HMO Property Co. And it revolves around parking. Everybody asks questions around parking. Now, before I get into the parking side of things, I'll give you a brief rundown on the definitions of what a house is and what we need to provide in the way of parking. And this comes from the R codes, the residential design codes, which has just been reviewed and released again. They brought out all different parts, and I'm not going to go delve into that just yet. We are going to get a town planner on to speak about the different reviews and what we can and can't do now and what they're driving us to do. But I was keen to see what the review brought out in the way of what we do, what we specialise in, which is the HMO, because a HMO is a house of multiple occupancy, a house with multiple people living in it. If you're from the East Coast and you're calling these rooming houses, then that's fine. You can call them rooming houses on the East Coast. But if you come to Western Australia and you ring a local council or a local shire or local government agency and you start talking about rooming houses, then they're probably just going to shrug their shoulders and say, I don't have a clue what you're talking about. We don't have that policy here. So in Western Australia, the Residential Design Code is a state policy which says the definition of a dwelling is a building or portion of a building used, adapted, or designed or intended to be used for the purpose of human habitation on a permanent basis by a single person, a single family, or no more than 6 persons who do not compromise a single family. The last bit is the key to the HMO, or no more than 6 persons who do not compromise a single family. This means you can have up to 6 unrelated people living in a dwelling, and you do not need to change the classification of the dwelling. You do not need to do anything specific to that apart from design a dwelling. And in the residential design codes, there's lots of information there about it. But essentially, a dwelling only needs a double lock-up garage. And that's all you need to provide, essentially. Now, at the HMO Property Co, with our new build properties, we do things a little bit differently. We still put them through council as dwellings. We still get them approved as dwellings. We still finance them as dwellings. However, after delivering over 600 rooms to the market and after housing well over 1,200 people over that time, we've collated lots of data, lots of feedback. And when people apply for rooms, they fill out a questionnaire for us and we ask them if they've got cars. Now, over them years, we have seen between 65 and 68% of our tenants, housemates and residents drive cars, which means there's between 30 and 35% of people that don't drive cars. However, again, that doesn't necessarily mean that every single house we do is going to have 65% of people driving. We've got 6-bedroom houses where nobody drives, and we've got 6-bedroom houses where everybody drives. Now, the successful outcome of any investment property, and if we go back to the episode I did with Mr. Steve McKnight not too long ago, it's safe to say he knows a thing or two about investing in property and putting the right management team in place. The successful outcome of your investment relies solely on the management that you put in place. And we've seen companies, property management companies with thousands of investment properties on their rent roll and one or two HMOs. And let's be honest, it's totally different. It's a house, yes. It's rented out, yes. It's got multiple people in one house and it's got potentially got multiple people in the other house, but that multiple people in the other house could be a family. So essentially you've got one lease in place. Now, if you've got a HMO, you've got multiple people living in that property and it's a different style of management that's required. And when we see these large companies, the Ray Whites, the LJ Hookers, and all these other companies that are out there that potentially have one or two HMOs on their rent roll, then they do not give them the time and energy that they require, and they get managed really badly. Which is why at the HMO Property Court, with our bespoke property management business Living Rooms, we only manage HMOs in that property management business. We've got a full team of people in that business with specific processes and systems in place that I set up in the very early days of this business, and the business has evolved and we've improved these systems and processes. But when we set the property management business up, we set it up to manage my own portfolio of properties, which nobody else would manage the way we wanted them managing. So we would take them to, again, LJ Hooker, I'm just pulling names out of a hat here, but we would take them to large companies, Harcourts, professionals, etc. And we would say, Mr. Property Manager, Mrs. Property Manager, can you rent our property out for us room by room? And can you put them all in individual leases? And can you collect an individual bond from each of them? And can you charge them all X amount of money? And they all said, no, we can't do that. We have to put them all on the same lease. We have to collect the median rent in that area, which means your property would only rent out for $500 a week. This led me to setting up the property management business, which back in the day was J&G Property Group. And we've recently rebranded it to Living Rooms to give it a bit more of a trendier name and trendier edge. But all of the problems that all of the investors that we speak to now think of would be a problem. I've already encountered that problem on my own portfolio. I've already put a system in place to encounter that problem for my own portfolio. And I've already put things there that you as the investor do not need to worry about. Because again, it all comes down to the management, right? And I set up the property management business because I wanted to get rid of the headache of managing these properties myself. Are they easy to manage? No, they're definitely not. As an investor, do you need to manage them? Do you need to worry about what goes on in them properties? Definitely not. That's what your property management team is for. I'm going to try and get my GM on the podcast soon. She is toying with the idea. The podcast being interviewed isn't for everybody, but I'll try and get her onto the podcast soon. She's got just under 30 years experience as a property manager in the UK and Australia. Very, very intelligent. Knows the game inside out. The HMO game is a little bit different from her, but she brings all these years of standard residential investment management to the business. And then we bring all of our years of HMO management experience and we blend them together, and we've got a really good outcome right now. Are we perfect? Absolutely not. No property management businesses. The people that we put in these houses are going to put a face onto us to be able to get access to these houses. I'm not saying that's everybody, but sometimes people will rent these houses and then they might but they might not be as honest, as good, as grounded as they might perceive to be in their first interview with a property manager, for instance. However, we could get really good people in there and their circumstances could change. They could have somebody pass away in their family, they could split up with their partners, they could lose their jobs, they could turn to drink, they could turn to drugs. These things happen. They can happen in a HMO, they can happen in a standard residential investment property. But all of the things that you can think of as a property investor, I've already put them risks and mitigations in place to mitigate the risks, and to put a system and process in place so that you don't have to worry about it, and the team at Living Rooms can absorb all of that things. So why am I telling you this? Because parking, like I say, is the biggest question that we always get asked about. And in the early days when we were doing a lot of the renovations, we would do a double lock-up garage, obviously, because it was already there. We'd obviously have 2 parking bays behind the double lock-up garage. And then people would generally have to park on the street. But as we've evolved as a company, we've done more and more properties. We've learned from every single one that we do. Every single property that we hand over, I go down there, I record a video down there, and I look and I think, what could we have done better? What do I like about this? What do I not like about this? We sit down as a team, we plan it out. We say, this was good, that was good. We could have done this differently. That could have been bigger, that could have been smaller. We need to put more parking at these properties now. What we started doing is we started trimming back some of the grass outside the properties and putting a base down so we could potentially get another car off the road. So that would potentially get us 4 or 5 off the road. We've got 2 in the garage, 2 behind the garage. And we would also rent out the garage, or we would try and rent out the garage for an extra $10 per week per side. Now, this doesn't always work because, again, everything in life is a negotiation. If we say to somebody, the room's $350 a week and the garage is $10 a week, they might turn around and say, well, look, I'll take the room if you throw the garage in for free. Now, nobody in the right mind is going to say, no, let's wait until we get the $350 and the $10, because the minute you lose $350 for that room, it's going to take you 35 weeks of renting out that garage to make up that lost week's rent. So in the established renovation space, we always try and get additional parking outside. We always look where there is additional parking outside. And then the property management team will specifically manage the parking on behalf of you, the investor, so that you're not getting complaints from neighbours, councils, property management teams, etc. We're going to take care of all of these problems that keep popping up, because that's what you engage us for. That's why you pay us, because we're the experts in this space. The property management team would allocate parking spaces fairly amongst the people that live there. And again, if somebody pays extra or someone negotiates really well, they will get access to the garage. If the garage is taken by the time we're renting out the last 2 rooms, for instance, the property manager would say, rooms 1, 2, 3 and 4 park there. This leaves you to park here or here. Pick where you want to park, and that's your parking spot for the tenure that you live in this property. No one else will park there. That is your spot. With the new builds, it's a lot better because we've got a blank canvas. And when you've got a blank canvas, you can create exactly what you want. And because we create exactly what we want, we create them so that we've got the capacity for the parking bays off the road. Not all 6 cars. And because we put these through council as a dwelling, and I'm letting you into a couple of our company secrets here, but we put them through as a dwelling. If we start putting more parking bays out the front, council are going to start flagging them and saying, you're stretching the boundaries here, guys, you're pushing the boundaries. So we put them through with the specific parking bays there so people can see them. And then we'll make sure there's 2 more at least 1 more, but we always try to get 2 more cars off the road, and that would leave potentially 1 or 2 cars on the street that need to park again. Now, I live in a suburb called Kensington. It's a couple of minutes away from the office. It takes me 3 minutes to get here in the morning. However, it's a very old street. They generally have single carports outside the houses, and then the rest of the cars have to park on the street. Now, it's a beautiful family suburb. Lots of people have grown up in these areas, which means that we have a family. Mum and dad both got cars, and now the kids are getting older and they're starting to drive. Now they've got cars as well. Nobody seems to think it's a problem when a family has 3 kids and then they've got 5 cars outside them houses. I'm walking up and down the street on a night when I take Freddie for a walk after I get in from work, and I see firsthand how many cars are parked outside these houses, and it looks a mess. I agree with you, it does look a mess unless it's managed correctly. But you could drop a HMO on that same street and nobody would know the difference between a HMO and the property across the road that's just got a mother and father with 3 kids, because it's just cars parked outside a house, right? So again, with a dwelling, you only need to provide the provision for what's inside the R codes. Now, on the other side of this, we've got what's called a residential building. Now, for all you rooming house lovers out there, listen up, because when you go over 6 people or more, you then fall into the residential building stratosphere area ecosystem. And this is when your building needs to be a class 1B building. A dwelling is a class 1A building, and a residential building is a class 1B building. This is for 7 to 12 people. not 6 or less, 7 or more. And the definition of that building is not defined by how many bedrooms you've got, it's defined by how many people that live there. So if you've got a 6-bedroom property and you rent it out to 7 unrelated people, then you are defaulting into residential building space. Now, it's not as easy as just saying, I am a residential building. There's a lot more that you need to go through, a lot more. Let me just give you the definition in the R codes. Residential building, a building or portion of a building, together with rooms and outbuildings, separate from such building but incidental thereto. Such building being used for, intended, adapted or designed to be used for the purpose of human habitation, temporarily by 2 or more persons. Hello, Airbnb. You fall into this residential building category. This is why Airbnbs need to go through planning departments. Or permanently by 7 or more persons who do not compromise a single family, but does not include a hospital or sanitarium, a prison, a hotel, a motel, or a residential school. So you need to be a Class 1B building for 7 to 12 people, and that residential building cannot be more than 299 square meters. So it cannot be 300 square meters or bigger, because then you fall into a Class 3 building, and then different categories again. Now, we've looked into the residential building side of things a few times. We are looking back into it again now because the 6x6 is good, don't get me wrong, but the residential building, if we can build 8, 9, 10 bedroom HMOs and we can rent them out to more people, that means we're getting more people into housing. Feedback that we've had from the planners is a lot of councils will not accept these on standard residential land. There you go, guys. I'm giving you some more IP there. If you're looking into this and you go out there and buy an R20 block, an R30 block, an R40 block, and you think you're going to put a residential building on there, there's good chances that it's not going to get approved. Mixed use is where it's at, even commercial land. But again, it's something we're working on in the background. And when we roll that out, we'll be potentially putting some syndicates together of some form to get them working and get them moving. Now, with these things, because we're going to be buying a bigger block of land, potentially 8,000-9,000 square meters, then these things will be driven by car parking, also depending on the location of where they are. Now, if they're close to bus routes, major infrastructure, major transport routes, then there's a good chance, or you've got a good argument to go to council to reduce the number of car bays you need. However, in the early days with negotiations on council with some of the sites that we had under contract, they said that we need 0.5 parking bays per bed. So if you've got 10 bedrooms or 10 beds, then you would need 5 parking bays, and they need to be clearly shown on the plan when you submit to the council for planning. So we are going to get some of these through sooner or later. It's the next evolution of the business, and then parking, obviously, on them things, it's going to be delineated nice and clearly. Going back to the standard HMO, the property management team will always take care of anything that goes wrong in these properties, or goes wrong. The property management team will take care of anything that happens, goes right, goes wrong. They are the cushion to absorb anything that happens in them properties from you, so that you can invest in a HMO and sit back and just reap the benefits of creating affordable accommodation, and then also creating positive cash flow for yourself. And it falls into the bracket of impact investing, doesn't it? So hope that helps clear up a few of the misconceptions around parking. If anyone's got any feedback on parking, if anyone lives near a property, I was just on the call with my sales team just before we hit record on this podcast, and we were talking about buying established properties. Now, I'm not going to digress too far from here, but currently established properties, because of the way the market's gone, we're struggling to find anything that stacks up financially. And when I say stacks up financially, like gives the return that we'd expect to get from a HMO to make it worthwhile to actually make the investment. It's very, very hard to find anything under $700,000 right now. That's not in Mandurah. Nothing wrong with Mandurah. I think it's had its run though. So anything under 700 grand right now is really, really hard to find unless you're down in that southern corridor. Established property that's big enough to be converted into a HMO. So you probably can find properties cheaper than 700 grand, but it'd be a 3x1, a 3x2, for instance. It's just not got HMO potential. And we were looking through some properties, and I just ran like a quick scenario for the team. So I pulled up my feasibility, and I said, look guys, here we go. We'll look for some properties now. We're going to put the max purchase price in at 850, and we're going to put 5-bedroom houses in that we want to purchase. And it literally discarded like 95% of the market. And then we found a property in Huntingdale, for instance, $775,000, bonkers. We then found something in Success, $845,000, so it was just on the cusp of being cut out of the search criteria. So we put them figures into the feasibility. We put some rough estimates in for conversion costs, and by the time you look at it, like some of these properties were needing $350,000 to $400,000 to purchase the property, pay the stamp duty, do the conversion, and put the furniture pack in there. And then when you look at a new build HMO, because you can get a 20% deposit and an 80% LVR from the bank, it means that you're needing sub $300,000 to do a brand new HMO deal. And then the gross rental income on a new build compared to an established property, there's a $30,000 difference in your gross rental income. Now, fast forward 10-15 years, when you pay the debt down on these properties, that $30,000 extra dollars per annum is going to go into your pocket because you made the right investment back in the day. I can't even remember why I started talking about established properties. We were talking about car parking. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Either way, I believe the new build HMO is the way to go. That way we can get more car parking bays outside the property. Property management team can manage the car parking and allocate the bays to the tenants so that they all know where they're parking. And then if anybody does complain, we can see straight away who isn't parking in their parking spot. But over the years, since 2014, I have been investing in HMOs now for a decade. Bonkers when I think about it. The business has been running since 2017, and since then, I would say I've had a handful of complaints about parking at properties. And all this took is me to pick the phone up, or my property management team to pick the phone up and make the phone call to the people that are parked in the incorrect spots, and the problem's resolved. We are very aware, and because I invest in this style of property myself, I'm very aware of the impact that it can have on the neighbourhood if it's not managed correctly. Now, I don't want to get myself a reputation as some kind of slumlord, and I don't want any of my clients to get reputations as slumlords, which is why we've got the systems and processes in place to make sure that these properties function and act like a standard residential dwelling, I should say there, and get you, the investor, the best return with the least amount of effort possible. So I hope that helped clear up some of the parking issues or the parking questions that we get constantly. I get it though, guys. I get it. It's where, if you've got this many people in a house, where do they park? They park in the exact same spots as if you have a family that's grown up and the kids have all started driving, and they have to park outside their property too. So hope that helps, guys. Like I say, I'm currently in Bali while you listen to this one, so enjoy the cold weather in Perth. I will be back soon. And remember, every master was once a disaster, and every winner was once a beginner.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you tune in the same time next week so you can stay up to date with all cash flow positive property updates.